All right, let's look at our problems about independence. So, this is our two-way tables, and now our two-way tables may be organized differently. The ones that we have looked at so far have all been organized such that we had our male and our female, and then the denominator was at the lower part, the bottom of that category. So we had 48 males and 52 females, and those were our denominators when we would come up with our percentages. Okay. And then for our marginal, 100 was the denominator. So now we may find some tables written in such a way where we may need to actually go across to do our fractions instead of straight up and down. So let's talk about why that is and what's causing that to happen. Here we go. So we want to see if we can't master our organization of how we do our two-way tables. So the idea is we must think about our two variables and think which one seems to be the one explaining the other. Which variable seems to be the one that is affecting the other or having an impact, or we're wanting to see if the fact that you are male or female is that category, is that variable affecting the other variable. Okay. So in this case where we did our Super Bowl problem, it was that way. Male or female, is that affecting the way that we did the game? So we had our 1,800 males, and that was our denominator for the conditional upon you being a male. 1,200 females, conditional upon you being 1,200 females, and so on. And then out of 3,000 total, that became our marginal fractions. All right, let's look at a new one. Okay, so here we have this problem here. So this is asking, does the driver type, so does whether you're a student or a staff member, affect the rate at which you own a certain type of car, American, European, or other origin? Okay, so here's the question that I want to pose to you. Do you think, do you think the type of driver affects the type of car you own, or the other way around? Okay, so the other way around would say the type of car you own affects the type of driver you are, meaning if you're a staff or a student. Okay, so think about those two statements and decide which situation we have. Okay, so hopefully you've come to the conclusion that the situation we have is this one here, that the fact that you're a student or staff member may affect the rate at which you have a certain kind of car. Okay, so no here. We think type of driver is the explanatory variable. It's explaining the response of the type of driver or type of car. Okay, therefore, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to then draw arrows from that variable. Student is one category. So I have 195 students. Staff is one category. So I have 164 staff members. So this is going to end up being my conditional section, because conditional upon you being a student or staff member, those are where my fractions are going to be for the conditional probabilities. And my denominator for student, 195. Denominator for staff, 164. Okay, and then I'll be comparing those to my marginal probabilities of overall what's happening. Okay, now again, if you just have these two categories, you can just compare them to each other. We'll look at that later. We'll look at kind of what happens if we have more than two categories later. All right, so let's fill in our fractions and get our percents. Here we go. What's our first one? So of conditional upon you being a student, what proportion own American cars? How do you do that fraction? conditional upon you being one of the 195 students. What proportion are owning American cars? Here it is, 115 out of 195. That comes out to be like 58.97. So that made it round up to 59.0. Okay, European, out of the students, 24 out of 195. There it is. 24 out of 195. That came out to 12.3%. All right. What percent of the students own another type of car, an Asian or Canadian or whatever? Then there we go. 28.2%. Okay. So that's the total out, conditional upon you being a student, the rate at which you own those cars. Okay. Before we go into stat, let's just kind of look at what's happening with them overall. That's going to be over here in this purple section. So out of all of the cars that we looked at, out of the 359 cars, what proportion owned an American? That was your 212 out of 359. That was 59.1%. Interesting. So at this point, I'm thinking, ooh, look at American. That's about the same as overall. Interesting. Okay, let's do the next one. European, 45. Overall, it's 45 out of 359. Okay. Ooh, 12.5%. Interesting. I think the fact that you were a student, so far, it hasn't changed the rate at which you owned those types of cars. Interesting. Okay, let's do the next one. Overall, there was 102 other types of cars in there. That was 28.4. Again, I am amazed at how close that was to what was happening with our students. Well, let's check those staff members. What kind of cars did we see in the staff parking lot? Well, again, this is conditional upon you being a staff member. Conditional. Out of the 164 staff members, what proportion were American? So my denominator every single time is 164. And here we go. And so on. And so let me just kind of pull these fractions in there. So how interesting. Look at what is happening here. The fact that you are a student or a staff, does that change the rate at which you own an American car? And that answer is not really. No. Students and staff are owning American car at almost the same rate. So the question is, how far can those be off? And the answer is within one whole percentage point. That's why we go to the tenths place, because your fractions aren't always going to be the same. Okay, so we want to go to the tenths place so we can see if it's a whole percentage or more off. All right, look. Is the fact that you're a student or staff affecting the rate at which you own a European car? And that answer is no. So very interesting, okay? And the last thing is the fact that you're a student or staff changing the rate at which you owned another kind of car? No, it's not. So I can see in every single type of car, the fact that you're a student or staff does not change the rate. So what does that mean? Is it independent? Independent, independent, independent. When the fact that you are one thing does not change the rate. So we have got this side over here happening. The type of driver and the type of car not affecting each other. They are independent of each other. There is no association, no relationship. Their percentages are the same. Their graphs are going to look the same because their percentages are the same. Okay, so let's write up what we know. Remember, there are three things that we want to include in an official write up. First, we want to make our statement. So I'm going to type these out. I've got you some little notes here. See, look, we've got this. Okay, so type it up. Let's get a little bigger so we can see. And here we go. Okay, so first thing we want to include in our write-up, make your statement. Let's state, was type of driver and type of car independent? Okay, so what did we decide? Type of driver and type of car are independent, not affecting each other, not changing. Okay, Good. State it, be done. Now elaborate. Now we go to, and remember my favorite thing to do when elaborating is start with my little part of the song. The fact that you are a student or staff member does not change the rate at which you own. And then if you're running out of room and want to make it short, you can just say a certain type of car. But I'm going to go ahead and say American, European, or other type of car because I can type fast. It does not change the rate at which you own those things. All right, first two statements. Make the statement. Second, elaborate. Third, statistical evidence to support your statement. Well, so I need to say how they're the same. So here we go. I'm going to make a statement for every category. So I say, for example, and I'm going to say three things here. I'm going to say about 59% of both students and staff own American cars. There's the first statement. The second statement was about European. And what did we have? About 12.5%. Okay, so why I chose 12.5 is because, see, that's what the marginal was. Overall, it was about 12.5. Okay. And see, in the students and staff were on either side, 12.3 versus 12.8. So that's why I chose 12.5 instead of just saying 59. Might even probably say 28.5 for the next one. So I'll probably go to the closest half of a percent. Whole percent, 59% and then the halves if they're close. Okay. So about 12.5% of both students and staff own European cars. That's what we're saying. And then final statistical support about, what was it, 28.5% of both students and staff. And staff own another type of car. There you go. There is a full statistical write up. You decided what explains what. You did your percentages correctly with the correct denominators. Then you gave me three statements. Make your statement of independence. Elaborate on the statement with the fact that you are one thing does not change the rate, or it does change the rate, whichever. And then support statistical evidence for every category. All right. Good job on our first problem of this notes, and I'm just going to take each one at its own. So next video, we'll do the next problem. You could try it on your own and then see how you do.